You ever get that feeling, right in the pit of your stomach, when you're told to do something that just feels morally bankrupt? Like you're being asked to be an accomplice to a crime against memory itself. That's exactly where Maria found herself, standing in a mansion that smelled like money and emptiness, holding a set of keys and a monstrous order. Burn Grandma's Christmas letters. She's not lucid anymore. Let that sink in. They weren't asking her to tidy up. They were asking her to commit arson on an old woman's soul. Now, I know what you're thinking. Just quit. Walk away. But here's the counterintuitively powerful truth. Sometimes, staying in the lion's den is the only way to tame the lions. Maria stayed. And what she discovered in that attic wasn't just paper and dust. It was a ticking time bomb of a 60-year-old secret, a love story buried alive, and a plot so cold it would make your Christmas cocoa freeze over. This isn't just another holiday tale. This is a masterclass in how the most powerless person in the room can become the most powerful force for justice. And it all started with her deciding to do the one thing she was told not to do. She opened the trunk. Maria stood in the grand, echoey foyer of the Whitaker mansion, the scent of pine and polish doing little to warm the chill in the air. Her new assignment was Eleanor Whitaker, a woman with a fortune as vast as her loneliness, now fading behind the mist of dementia. The family, all sharp suits and sharper smiles, had just given Maria her instructions along with the keys. They called it practical advice. But let me tell you, friend, sometimes practicality is just a fancy word for a heart that's forgotten how to feel. They saw a confused old woman and a cluttered old house to be cleared. Maria, shaped by years of real-life immigrant stories and human drama, saw a person. Those old boxes in the attic, especially that rusty trunk full of papers. Just Christmas junk, the son had said, waving a hand like he was swatting a fly. Burn Grandma's Christmas letters. She's not lucid anymore to miss them. Now, think about that for a second. To them, her memories were kindling. This is the crossroads we so often face. Do the easy thing or the right thing. The working class, the domestic workers, they live in this space daily, following orders while listening to the quieter, stronger order of their own conscience. Why do people fear the past? Often, because it holds a truth that's inconvenient to their present. A true story isn't just about what happened. It's about the weight of what was left unsaid, packed away in attics and hearts. If you ever find yourself being told to burn the letters, to erase something because it's messy or emotional, pause. Ask yourself, what am I being asked to destroy? And who benefits from that silence? The most powerful life lessons are buried in the archives of someone's life, waiting for a respectful heart to uncover them. Maria nodded politely, the perfect picture of compliance. But in her eyes, a different plan was forming. She remembered her own avu in Portugal, how her fragmented memories in her final days were the only treasures they had left. To discard someone's history is to discard their soul. So, as the family's Mercedes crunched down the icy driveway, Maria didn't head for the fireplace. She climbed the creaking stairs to the attic, drawn by a pull stronger than any paycheck. This wasn't just about cleaning, it was about bearing witness. And sometimes, the most inspirational journeys begin with a single, silent act of rebellion against a cold command. The attic was a frozen cathedral of forgotten time, dust dancing in the weak winter light. And there it sat, the trunk, not junk, but a time capsule. Her fingers brushed the cold latch. Inside wouldn't be just papers, it would be echoes. The story of Eleanor Whitaker was about to be reopened, not by her blood, but by a stranger's compassionate curiosity. And in that moment, Maria had no idea that this act of simple human kindness was about to unravel a secret that would shake the foundations of that very mansion. What could possibly be in those letters that was worth hiding, worth burning? The latch gave way with a sigh that seemed to hold the weight of decades. Inside the trunk, Maria didn't find worthless junk, but a life meticulously preserved. Bundles of letters tied with faded ribbons, sepia photographs of a smiling young Eleanor, and pressed flowers so delicate they might dissolve at a touch. The first letter she unfolded began, "My dearest Eleanor, this will be our first Christmas apart since the war," and was signed with a name that wasn't Whitaker. Jacob. Here was the first crack in the perfect family facade. This, my friend, is where storytelling becomes archaeology of the heart. We're taught to obey, to follow the path laid out for us. But what if the right path is the one you have to clear yourself, with nothing but your intuition as a machete? Maria's hands trembled, not from cold, but from the sacredness of the act. She was reading the private love story of a woman the world saw only as a rich, addled old lady. Each letter from Jacob spoke of a promise, a piece of land they bought together upstate, a dream of building not just a house, but a sanctuary for artists after the war. Then, the letters stopped abruptly in 1952. The final one from Eleanor to Jacob, never sent, was a tear-stained masterpiece of grief and betrayal. They are forcing me to marry Arthur Whitaker. The land is in your name only. Keep it safe, my love. Forget me. Can you feel the human drama here? A dream buried under 60 years of snow. Now, let's talk about applied courage. When you stumble upon a truth that isn't yours but demands to be heard, what do? Do you close the trunk and walk away? Or do you become the messenger? Maria faced this exact choice. She could have followed the family's order, earned her pay, and moved on. But that's not how inspirational change happens. Change happens when someone chooses connection over convenience. Think of it in your own life. When you see an injustice at work, a lonely neighbor, a forgotten promise, your trunk of letters moment. The action isn't always grand. Sometimes, it's just refusing to look away. Night fell, and Maria sat on the dusty attic floor, a circle of light from her lamp, the only warmth in the room. She read until her eyes ached, piecing together the puzzle. The land. Jacob had died years ago, a bachelor. The deed must still exist somewhere. But why was the family so desperate to burn this history? Unless they knew. Unless the value of that forgotten land wasn't just sentimental. The pieces were swirling, but the picture was still unclear. Maria knew one thing for certain. She had to talk to Eleanor, to reach through the fog of her illness and find the woman who wrote those passionate letters. But how do you connect with someone who's lost in time? She descended from the attic, a woman on a mission. The domestic worker was transforming into a detective, a guardian. In Eleanor's room, she found her staring blankly at a flashing infomercial. Maria didn't speak of letters or land. Instead, she hummed an old Christmas carol from the 40s. I'll be home for Christmas. And there it was, a flicker. A single tear traced a path down Eleanor's wrinkled cheek. The connection was made, not through demands, but through a shared fragment of memory. The bridge was built, but on the other side of that bridge waited not just a confused old woman, but a secret that powerful people had spent a lifetime guarding. And they wouldn't let some nurse uncover it without a fight. The quiet hum of Christmas carols became their secret language. Maria learned that Eleanor's mind was like a snow globe. Shaken, the memories swirled and settled in random, beautiful patterns. One day she was a girl on her father's farm. The next, a young woman dancing with Jacob at a USO Christmas party. He gave me a sprig of mistletoe, she'd whisper, her eyes clear for a fleeting moment. Said he'd build me a studio there, with northern light for my painting. That was the key. The land wasn't just an asset. It was meant to be an artist's colony, a legacy of hope. This is the core of emotional stories, not the grand events, but the intimate dreams that get sacrificed on the altars of money and propriety. Armed with fragments of names and places from the letters, Maria began her search in the quiet hours of the night. This is where real life becomes a thriller. She used the skills many in the working class master out of necessity, resourcefulness. She visited the local historical society, posed as a genealogy student, and pieced together Jacob's life. A quiet man, a carpenter who bought 50 acres in the Catskills in 1949. He died in 1998, leaving no will. And here's the bombshell, the kind of twist that fuels true stories. Under adverse possession laws, if no heir claims land and taxes go unpaid, it can revert to the state or be sold at auction for pennies. An auction scheduled for December 27th. Can you see the monstrous picture coming into focus? The Whitaker children knew. They'd found a mention of the land in some old paperwork and discovered its current astronomical value. A tech billionaire wanted it for a private retreat. They needed Eleanor declared fully incompetent so they could control her estate and let the land slip away, then buy it themselves through a shell company. The Christmas letters were the proof of Eleanor's lifelong emotional claim, the thread that could unravel their entire scheme. Their order to burn them wasn't cruelty. It was corporate espionage on a grandmother's heart. This is the human drama where greed wears the mask of family duty. So what does Maria do with this thermonuclear truth? She's a hospice worker, not a lawyer. She has no money, no influence. This is the moment in any great life lesson where you feel utterly outmatched. Here's the practical takeaway. You never fight the battle alone. You find allies. Maria's ally came from the most unexpected place. The gruff Ukrainian superintendent of her apartment building, Mr. Petrov. A man who'd also lost his homeland and understood the value of legacy. Paperwork war, he grunted, looking at her findings. We fight with better paperwork. He connected her with a pro bono legal clinic that handled elder fraud. You see, community is the currency of the unseen. The clock was ticking. Christmas Eve was in 2 days, the auction right after. Maria had the evidence, a lawyer, and a fragile, flickering witness in Eleanor. But she needed a miracle. She needed Eleanor to have a moment of crystalline lucidity, to affirm the truth before a notary. On December 23rd, as snow blanketed the city, Maria prepared for the greatest gamble. She filled Eleanor's room with the smells of her childhood Christmas: gingerbread, orange peel, pine. She played Bing Crosby. She held the pressed mistletoe from the trunk. And she waited, praying for the snow globe to settle on the right memory. The past was present. The truth was on the threshold. But so was the Whitaker family, about to make a surprise visit. The collision was inevitable. The sleek black cars pulled up just as the first chords of White Christmas filled the room. Maria's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum counting down the seconds to disaster. The Whitaker siblings, David and Vanessa, swept in with the cold air, their smiles as genuine as plastic holly. They'd come for a final family Christmas, they said, but their eyes scanned the room like auditors, landing on Maria with a silent, icy question. This, my friend, is the pressure point of any great human drama. When the powerful sense their narrative slipping away, they don't retreat, they escalate. They weaponize normality. We'll take over now, nurse. You can have the night off, David said, his tone leaving no room for debate. But Maria had learned a crucial life lesson from her own struggles. When you have no authority, you wield authenticity. She didn't cower or argue. Instead, she leaned close to Eleanor, who was stroking the mistletoe, and spoke softly, but loud enough for the sharks to hear. Eleanor, your friends Jacob and Mr. Petrov send their love. They're waiting to see you at the studio soon. The names were grenades. David's face went pale. Vanessa's perfect composure cracked. What nonsense are you filling her head with? She hissed. In that moment, the mask fell. Their fear confirmed everything. Maria wasn't just a nurse. She was the keeper of the truth they'd tried to incinerate. Now let's talk strategy under fire. When you're cornered, you create a diversion. Maria excused herself to the kitchen to prepare tea, but her real mission was the house phone. With trembling fingers, she called the lawyer, uttering the prearranged emergency phrase, "The gingerbread is burning." It meant, "Get here now with the documents." Then, she did something brilliantly simple. She turned the oven on high, opened the door, and accidentally let the smoke alarm shriek through the mansion. Chaos. In the flurry of coughs and confusion, she slipped back, guided Eleanor's hand to sign the hastily prepared affidavit of intent the lawyer had emailed over. A signature that was a roar of defiance from a woman the world thought silent. The family stormed into the kitchen, furious. "What is the meaning of this?" David roared. But he was too late. The wail of the smoke alarm was replaced by another sound, the doorbell. Standing in the swirling snow was Maria's lawyer, a young woman with a steely gaze, and a notary public, stamp in hand. The battlefield had just been leveled. This is where inspirational turns into tactical. Maria had turned the home, their fortress, into a courtroom. She presented the letters, the deed research, the timeline. She spoke not of theft, but of legacy. Not of greed, but of a promise between two souls that deserved to outlive them both. She made it about storytelling, the story Eleanor and Jacob wrote, versus the one the Whitakers were forging. David spluttered, threatening lawsuits, defamation, calling Maria a gold-digging immigrant. But the lawyer calmly played her ace. A copy of the auction listing and the shell company's documents, traced back to a Whitaker family trust. The silence that followed was colder than the winter night outside. They were caught. The domestic worker had outmaneuvered the tycoons. But this wasn't about victory, it was about restoration. Maria looked at Eleanor, who was whispering Jacob's name, her eyes clearer than they'd been in years. The land would be saved. But for what? The dream wasn't just to stop a sale, it was to bring the dream to life. And as the defeated family slunk away, a new question hung in the aromatic air. How do you build a sanctuary from a 60-year-old promise, with only 3 days until Christmas? The dust settled, but the real work was just beginning. With the Whitakers' legal threat neutralized, their own lawyer advising a swift, quiet settlement to avoid scandal, the path was clear, but the clock was a tyrant. Christmas Day was tomorrow, the auction in 48 hours. Maria sat with Eleanor, the lawyer, and Mr. Petrov, who'd brought his entire toolbox for moral support. The deed was in Jacob's name, and with no direct heir, the state was set to sell it. The legal solution was a whirlwind. They would petition the court for Eleanor to be named the rightful beneficiary based on the letters of partnership in her affidavit. But courts move slower than Christmas glaciers. They needed a Christmas miracle of the legal variety. Here's where the working class network shines brighter than any star on top of a tree. Mr. Petrov made a call. His cousin drove a snowplow upstate. Another friend knew a local judge in Catskill who was a notorious softie for true stories of love and legacy. Maria, fueled by a purpose that overrode exhaustion, drafted a plea so emotionally raw it could melt steel. She attached photos of the letters, of young Eleanor and Jacob. She didn't ask for the land. She asked for the chance to fulfill a Christmas promise made by two hearts broken by time. This is applied storytelling. You don't just state facts. You make the listener feel the imperative to act. You turn a case file into a cause. On Christmas Eve morning, as the city slept under a pristine blanket of white, the call came. The judge, moved, had issued an emergency injunction halting the auction, citing a compelling prima facie case of unjust enrichment and a moral claim that transcends statute. They had their miracle, but Maria looked at Eleanor, now drifting in and out of sleep, and knew the victory was hollow if the dream died here. The land was safe, but the artist colony was still a ghost. So she did the unimaginable. She called a local newspaper, told them a Christmas story too good to be true, but it is. By afternoon, a reporter was at the door. The human drama was about to go public. The article hit online on Christmas Eve. A love story frozen in time thaws to save a legacy. It went viral. Donations started trickling in from strangers touched by the emotional story. A local builders union offered volunteer labor. An art school offered to be a partner. The forgotten land, a number on a deed, was suddenly pulsing with collective hope. Eleanor, watching the news coverage on Maria's laptop, squeezed her hand. Jacob would be so happy, she said, lucid as a bell. In that moment, the past and the future kissed. The sanctuary wasn't just for artists. It was a testament that no act of love, however buried, is ever truly lost. It just waits for the right pair of hands to dig it up. But every sunrise casts a shadow. David Whitaker, humiliated and cornered, made one last move. He showed up not with lawyers, but with a check. A massive check. For the land. Name your price. Let's end this circus, he said, his voice stripped of its arrogance, leaving only desperate hunger. He revealed the true reason for his obsession. His own business empire was teetering, and the sale to the tech billionaire was his only lifeline. The villain had a motive deeper than greed. He was drowning. This is the ultimate life lesson. Sometimes, those who seem to have it all are standing on a cliff of their own making. Maria held the check, the power to secure her own future 10 times over. She looked from the check to Eleanor's peaceful face, to the flashing donation counter on the news website. The final choice was hers. Maria placed the check face down on the table. The sound was softer than a snowflake landing, but in that quiet room, it echoed like a gavel. The land isn't for sale, Mr. Whitaker, she said, her voice steady. But your mother's forgiveness might be. And that's a transaction you can't buy. You have to earn it. She offered him not a deal, but a choice. Walk away with nothing, or stay and help build the first studio in his mother's name. This is the alchemy of inspirational endings. It doesn't crush the opponent. It offers them a chance to become part of the solution. Redemption is the most powerful gift, but you have to be willing to unwrap it yourself. David stood frozen, the facade of the ruthless businessman crumbling to reveal a scared, regretful son. He didn't take the check. He didn't agree to help. He just turned and walked out into the snowy night, a solitary figure swallowed by the storm. The ending wasn't neat, but real life rarely is. The victory was in preserving the possibility of change, for him and for the dream. On Christmas morning, Eleanor passed away in her sleep, a faint smile on her lips, holding the pressed mistletoe in Maria's hand. She didn't live to see the groundbreaking, but she died knowing her promise to Jacob was secure. Her final Christmas gift was a legacy of hope, delivered by the most unlikely of angels, a domestic worker who chose to care. Months later, on the land in the Catskills, the first building of the Eleanor and Jacob Creative Haven was erected. The cornerstone held a time capsule, the bundle of Christmas letters, a photo of Maria and Eleanor, and Mr. Petrov's favorite wrench. Maria, now the foundation's director, watched as the first artists arrived. They were immigrants, single mothers, veterans, the unseen, the overlooked. The circle was complete. The love story that was almost burned away now fueled a furnace of creativity for a new generation. This is the profound power of storytelling. It takes the embers of one person's dream and turns it into a beacon for thousands. So what's the actionable takeaway from this whole emotional story? It's this: you are surrounded by trunks every single day. The lonely elder in your building, the coworker with a dream they're too afraid to voice, the forgotten talent you've packed away in your own attic of excuses. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to be a Maria for someone. Ask the extra question. Offer the unexpected kindness. Read the proverbial letters. You don't need to uncover a fortune to make a fortune of difference. Start small. Visit that neighbor. Mentor someone. Volunteer for a single hour. These are the seeds of sanctuaries. And remember, the system, the Davids and Vanessas of the world, banks on your compliance. They bank on you being too tired, too busy, too powerless to question, to dig, to connect. But when you do, you don't just change a story. You change the very fabric of what's possible. You prove that the most inspirational force on this planet isn't money or power, but the unwavering integrity of an ordinary person who decides that some orders are meant to be broken and some letters are meant to be read. The final chapter of this true story isn't written in a legal document or on a donated check. It's being written right now, by you, in the choices you make today. What will your first line be? So, let me ask you directly, where are the trunks in your life? What letters have you been told to burn, metaphorically speaking? Is it your own dream you've archived as impractical? Is it an elderly relative's story you've been too busy to listen to? Or is it an injustice you see every day but have learned to walk past? Maria's power didn't come from a title or a bank account. It came from a simple, revolutionary act. She valued a human story more than a convenient order. That's a power every single one of us has access to right now. Will you choose convenience, or will you choose courage? Will you be the person who follows the cold instruction, or the one who lights a candle in the attic? I'm not just asking you to feel inspired. I'm provoking you to act. Today, before this video ends, look around your world with new eyes. Who is the Eleanor in your orbit? What is the land of potential waiting to be claimed? Share your answer in the comments. Tell me one small way you can be a Maria this week. Let's start a chain reaction of intentional kindness. If this true story of a domestic worker changing destinies resonated with you, if you believe in inspirational human drama and real-life storytelling, then you belong here. Subscribe to Christmas Untold and hit that bell for all notifications. Because the world is full of invisible hands writing beautiful, untold stories. And together, we're going to bring every single one of them into the light. Your next dose of hope is just one click away.